S-Word, featuring Will Gavin and Master Tess Fassian. And a squad of big-name contributors. The S-Word from talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome to the S-Word, brought to you by talkSPORT and the talkSPORT S-Word YouTube channel with myself, Max Scott, the man to my left, Master Tess Fatsian. Good morning if you're listening from the United States. Good afternoon if you're listening from Great Britain. Boy, have we got a show for you. Last night, classic Arsenal set-piece goal, 1-0 against Burnley, one game away from the Premier League title, the first in, 22 years, Master?
That is correct, and also great to have you on the S-Word. Nice to have
very much,
great
mate.
intro starting off with, and what a better day to come, because the Premier League title will come to an end tonight.
It might. It might not.
And
we're going to get stuck into that and so much more, including the bombshell news that Pep Guardiola is all but confirmed officially to be leaving Manchester City. 10 years, 20 titles, 6 Premier Leagues, unprecedented success. But we're going to be asking the question, should there be an asterisk next to those titles with the dark cloud of 115 charges looming over Manchester? It's usually a dark cloud of rain because it can't stop raining in Manchester, but there's a serious conversation to be had about whether that is going to be ruined, that legacy ruined, should we get the verdict on that. As well, Enzo Maresca has reportedly already agreed a 3-year deal at Manchester City, but away from that, with the World Cup looming, Neymar, who hasn't played for 3 years for his country, has been picked for the World Cup squad. We're going to be discussing that and also much more, including we've got a special guest. Former Scotland striker Mark McGee, the first player to be signed by Sir Alex Ferguson at Aberdeen. We're going to be discussing Scotland, their World Cup team news, and of course, the great Sir Alex Ferguson. All that and so much more on the S-Word here for talkSPORT. Wow. What a show. What a day of sporting headlines. We've got it all to come. But I say, Master, there's one place for us to start, right? Of course, it's got to be Arsenal. But you could say Pep Guardiola. You could say Neymar. You could say Enzo Maresca.
They tried their best to try and hijack a beautiful moment at the Emirates, apparently. I didn't have service, but no, of course, we have to start.
Well, talk to me. You were there. You were there, seeing the scenes in all its glory. I know that Arsenal are constantly under the microscope. They're constantly under pressure by the fun police. I'm not part of that. Surely that was a special moment last night, knowing that you are literally a game away, 90 minutes away from a Premier League title.
The atmosphere was amazing, probably the best it's been at the Emirates the last month. It was beautiful to see it, and it was beautiful to hear on talkSPORT as well. Let's give you how it sounded last night here on the talkSPORT radio wave as Arsenal was able to overcome Burnley 1-0 in their final home game at the Emirates.
This is the moment that Arsenal have been waiting for. It's in their hands, it's up to them. 2 games. That's it, fellas. Win them both and you're champions. Bukayo Saka, this time he does go long towards the goalkeeper, headed in by Havertz, and Arsenal take the lead at the Emirates Stadium. 11 games this season, they've won 1-0 in all competitions. There is a red card check here for serious foul play. Is it against Kai Havertz? I think it is. Well, I think the check is over, isn't it? No serious foul play.
I've seen some different angles of it. I don't know how we can actually see it and look at it and get it wrong, to be honest.
The ball's out of play, and then it is over. One step closer, one more to go. From here, it's theirs to lose.
It feels much closer after today, but we still know that unless something happens tomorrow night, we have another game to win, and let's enjoy today.
Look, Max, as much as I love to hear myself, I wanted to make sure that people got to fully, properly experience what that sounded like on talkSPORT and the sights and sounds of the whole experience. And, for me, I've been going to the Emirates for quite some time and having friends and cousins who have season tickets. And the one thing you always hear when you go around to other grounds is how quiet the Emirates is. Not just here in the UK. I mean, I've go to games in the Bundesliga and La Liga, and you tell them you're an Arsenal supporter, and it's very well known. It's a church in terms of environment.
Do you agree with that synopsis generally? It's taking away last night, taking away these big occasions that we've seen in the Champions League.
Yeah,
you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been there. It's been frustrating. It's
What is that? And do you expect that to change if you do finally get over the line, which I'm sure you will? I'm not one of those doubters. I'm one of those that actually wants it to happen. I think for the sake of football, we need a changing of the guard. Mikel Arteta, the transformation he's achieved over and the change of culture he's achieved is incredible. Do you think that can change?
It has changed. That's the thing.
Since when?
This season.
Okay.
It has changed. You look at the last month. How could you not look at last night's game and see how it's changed? How could you not see the Atletico match and see how it's changed? The atmosphere, the environment has been tremendous. It has been everything I had always hoped that the Emirates would be when I go to other grounds. And the beautiful part of that is all the credit goes to Mikel Arteta.
Without a doubt, mate. Look, I'm not going to be one of these that tries to sort of play down the fact that the football isn't as entertaining maybe as it was 20 years ago. The game has changed, and I think largely to Pep Guardiola, we can talk about that in a moment. If you win it, you've won it fair and square, and I think you're going to.
100%.
However, one thing that I was saying a few months ago, a month ago, when you were wobbling, you could hear all the knees knocking from North London, right?
Yeah.
I was beginning to think, if Arsenal don't win the Premier League, one of the main reasons will be is because the pressure from the fans is so palpable during games. I think it weighs heavy on the shoulders of the players. Now, fair play to them. They've come up and they've shown what they can do. What do you make of that assessment?
I mean, I think that was the case for sure. I mean, the Bournemouth match you think of and some of the other difficult draws or results that they've had the Emirates, you've clearly seen that. But that was the beautiful part about last night. Even in the midst of whatever minimal suffering existed in that match, a 1-0 victory that they had, even in the biggest adverse moments, if you want to even call it that in that match, the fans were supportive. Like, people were standing up, people were cheering, people were chanting, people were not 90 minutes of support.
But that's because they know what the stakes are.
No,
that's because they know that the stakes are a Premier League title.
It goes beyond that, though. I mean, you could have literally laid down on the ground after Burnley, and it could have meant absolutely nothing. They showed up. Despite it being a relegation side, they showed up 3 hours before the match. Made sure the supporters came out to the players. Make sure they showed them all the support they could possibly get. There's been other situations like this where there has been a lull in environment and in the atmosphere at the Emirates, and that was just not the case right now. So for people to go out there and say, even for you to question the fact that, like, has it changed or will it change? It has changed. And if you can't acknowledge that at this point, there's nothing else to really say about that.
Well, I don't go to the Emirates. I don't go to the Emirates, right? I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. I'm not. I live in London. I'm not of London. But I'm not here trying to take away from Arsenal, which a lot of people we know are going to do if Arsenal.
I'm just so used to a person sitting in your chair typically trying to do that. So I wonder if he called out because
what I will say though is that the football isn't vintage, and even Patrick Vieira, who for me was like an archetype of the most entertaining period of football when he was captain of Arsenal, Roy Keane was captain of Manchester United, Wenger versus Sir Alex Ferguson. For me, he even said this last night when he was on commentary for Sky. He said this team that we're seeing from Arsenal is more akin to George Graham's 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Boring Arsenal, 1-0 to the Arsenal. They're tapping back into Arsenal.
But you've not got a problem with that.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
Why would I have it?
But there are so many Arsenal fans that are insecure about it, Master. There are so many Arsenal fans that try to tell people and try to preach to people that know football, like you and I, that this is somehow the sort of peak of the evolution of football. It's not. But that doesn't matter for me. You're going to exactly because you're going to.
Here's the thing. 3 or 4 years ago, when we were playing open, attacking style of play, and when we couldn't stop and keep a clean sheet to save our lives.
And you exclusively took shots from 3 yards out, right? You're trying to walk the ball into the net.
But I'm talking about the 2022 season when Zinchenko came in, Gabriel Jesus came in, and Arteta was really able to apply the inverted fullback. And they were flying. From attacking standpoint, they were scoring goals left and right.
Yeah.
But they couldn't stop anyone to save their life. The entire philosophy has changed since then. And I'm here to tell people, if you find this style of play boring, just wait till this summer. Because Arsenal's going to spend a lot of money, and they're going to have the best defense in Europe, and I promise you they will have the best attack.
What makes you so confident?
Because they weren't healthy this year, and they still are up with pace with Manchester City for the most goals scored in the Premier League. You get a healthy Bukayo Saka, you get more depth, you actually get another striker if it's a Julian Alvarez or whoever the case may be. This is scary hours for everyone. I'm telling you right now, this is the worst Arsenal's going to be for the next 5 years. They are the top in revenue in the Premier League this season. They are going to spend every single dollar they possibly can to continue to build up the depth, to build up the attack, to build up the left wing, to build up the striker. Every single weakness you see in the attack right now, I promise you, it will get addressed. And if you find this style of play boring, trust me, it's going to be a whole lot more boring when you're getting your butts kicked 4-0 in the next coming seasons. I promise you that. So enjoy this now. Enjoy 1-0 to the Arsenal. Enjoy it now. Because it's only going to get better.
The thing is, Master, not many people are enjoying it.
I don't care.
Because it's death by 1,000 crosses.
Care.
But it doesn't matter. Arsenal are probably going to win the league. It could even be done tonight. You and I are both going to be in North London,
every second of it,
taking in the sights and sounds of it. And fair play, you're going to go and win it. But last night wasn't without controversy. Now, you don't think it's a controversy, but the vast majority of football fans will tell you that it is a disgrace that Kai Havertz,
an absolute disgrace.
Thank you, was not sent off for a cynical, dirty, aggressive foul on the back of Leslie Ogachukwu. It's a reality. Surely you can take your Arsenal bias off. You won the game. You probably would have won the game because your defence is so good.
The official was right there.
That means nothing. That means zip these days.
That's all people care about. The same people complain about VAR. What do they want? They want to get rid of VAR, and they want to go with the call on the field. The official was right there. And what did he see? Yes, it was a bad challenge. Was it a deserving yellow card? Absolutely. Orange card? Sure. I completely agree with that part. A red card?
Red card. No such thing as an orange card.
In terms of its questionability, yes. And that's why I went to VAR.
Okay, Arsenal fans are making up cards for their own players. It's either red or it's either yellow.
Come on, this is a term England people have used in terms of orange cards, whether it's a questionable red card or not. It's not a new term to be used. However, in terms of the challenge, yes, it was a bad challenge. He got properly disciplined for that. It went to VAR. They went with the call on the field. What do people have a problem with?
I think people have a problem with that. You know, Javi Simmons for Spurs was sent off for the exact same thing, right? Now, you're going to say, well, Phil Foden had a similar challenge.
Let me say it or no?
I'm going to say it for you. But the point is, this speaks to a much wider issue of inconsistency, whether it's inconsistency from on-field referees, whether it's inconsistency from the VAR itself. It's one or the other. There needs to be root and branch change in the entire PGMOL. It isn't good enough. And I think that last night you still would have won that game because you were playing Burnley, who were dreadful, who were going to the Championship.
So what are you upset about?
What I'm upset about is the integrity of the game. That's what I'm upset about. Because ultimately, you've had a player that shouldn't be on the pitch. You have a player that shouldn't be playing the final day.
But you thought they would have won the game either way. What difference would have it made?
Because the rules are there to be adhered to.
Yeah, and guess what? And what do you want instead? Do you want VAR or not?
No, I don't want VAR.
Okay, so then what would you go with? You would go with what? The call on the field. And what did the officials say on the field?
I'd still disagree with it.
The integrity that you're talking about, if we got the integrity of the game in your idealistic way, in the idealistic way that a lot of Premier League fans want right now, which is to get rid of VAR, what would have happened? The call on the field would have stand. So
yeah, and it still would have been wrong, and we'd be here debating that was the incorrect call. And as you say, the referee was right there and still made the incorrect decision. This is a cynical, aggressive foul that could end the season.
I don't think it was
games left.
I don't think it was cynical.
He scraped his studs down the back of his Achilles. Again, I think that it's a terrible, terrible.
It was a bad challenge. It was a bad challenge. The still image looks worse than the real play. When you watch it live, which Will's always been one to advocate for the fact that still images do not tell the entire story. So everyone's sending me that stupid still image 1,000 times over the last 12 hours. You look at the real thing and you see the live action. It's not as negligible as the still image looks. And that's why the call on the field was a yellow card. When I saw it in real time, it was a bad challenge. Havertz shouldn't have done it. It was a yellow card. When it went to VAR, I did not understand it. When I saw it in replay, I could understand why that was being looked at. And they went through the proper channels, and they stuck with the call on field.
Yeah, no, look, it's happened. We would still be debating this if VAR was scrapped, which we want it to. But enough of that. Arsenal could well win the league tonight.
They're going to win.
If Manchester City go up against Bournemouth, who are still chasing potential Champions League football. That's another conversation. Andoni Areola leaving the football club and potentially missing out on top-level European football. But they come up against a Manchester City tonight who... We understand the players found out last night from a furious Pep Guardiola, who is said to be absolutely beside himself that this has been leaked from the football club, that the announcement hasn't been on his terms.
Do you think he was really upset?
I think Pep Guardiola controls every element of footballing operations at that football club, and rightly so, by the way.
So then would you not feel like, again, I didn't have service at the stadium, so I didn't know this news until I got home. But the way it dropped, the news dropped right after Arsenal went up 1-0. You don't think that was intentional at all?
No, I don't. I mean, there were murmurings of it before the game as well, Master. Like,
dropping a report saying Pep is very furious. You don't think that's... I don't know. I question the entirety of that sequence of events.
My question to you is, do you think how do you think that plays psychologically on a group of players that are already chasing the title, and now they've got this sort of added arc in the narrative that one of the most successful managers in footballing history, domestic footballing history, is leaving in 2 games' time? How does that play out psychologically with these players?
I mean, I'd have to think they've known for a bit now. But
I think if reports are to be believed, of course they will have suspected.
We've seen the rumors, we've seen the reports. I mean, even here's my thinking. There's this one Twitter account, Hand of Arsenal. I don't know who is behind this account. For all I know, it's probably like a Kroenke family member, because somehow they always get all the
bang
news.
On every single time.
They get every single news. They're always pro-propaganda Arsenal. I swear he's probably like a Kroenke grandkid for all I know. They were tweeting this out a couple weeks ago about the possibility. And the
rumors have been around for a long time.
I know. I'm saying, though, again, for this account in particular,
yeah,
for as accurate as it has been for Arsenal information, there's clearly someone in the inside. And they tweeted out a couple weeks ago about the Pep Guardiola news that he was going to step down, and that's kind of why everyone's kind of being hush-hush about it. We've seen the rumors of Enzo Maresca. This has been going on for a month now that we've seen the reports. So going back to your question, I would have to assume that people internally and the players have known this.
So they're prepared for this.
I think they have been prepared for this. Because that's why when you see the FA Cup final, you see the trophy, you see... who was it? Mark Gahey, was it, that received the trophy, and then Pep immediately took it out of his hand so he can give all the trophies and take all the pictures he wanted to with the coaching staff. I think this has been in place for much longer than
we've seen. We have publicly seen. But now that it's well understood widely in the public domain that he is going, where does Pep? What's your immediate reaction? Where does he sit in the pantheon of greats? How do you feel about his departure from the Premier League?
I mean, what Pep has done has been instrumental for this entire era. You cannot speak about the Premier League during this golden era, if you want to describe it, without mentioning Pep Guardiola in Manchester City. All the trophies they've won, the style of play, the inverted fullback that has completely changed just not only English football, but world football as we know it. He has completely revolutionized everything from the top down, from the infrastructure, from ownership, all the way down, and has, in my opinion, done it for the better. However, there's still 115 charges that we have to address. And I don't know how you feel about that, but the timing also of him stepping down now with 1 year left on his contract, when he's typically been someone that has seen through every single contract that he's had, to step down now makes me feel like something is on the horizon with these 115 charges.
Yeah, look, Master, I'll say this. You cannot take away the tactical prowess and brilliance of Pep Guardiola. You cannot take away the 20 trophies that he's won in 10 years. It's undeniable brilliance. However, I know that I speak for hundreds of thousands of football fans that aren't Manchester City fans in saying that until there has been a final judgment on this historic footballing case involving the 115 charges, there is a dark cloud hanging over the legacy of Pep Guardiola, and that's sad for him. That's sad for him because he doesn't deserve that, because we know that he's an absolutely wonderful manager. But there are, as I say, so many fans that look at this perceived injustice. And of course, Manchester City deny all wrongdoing. I'm not making a comment on the outcome of that case. I don't have any information on that at all. But what I'm telling you is, because this case has been going on for so long, because it has lacked transparency, because journalists aren't allowed to report on this and it's all cloak and daggers, there is a feeling that something isn't right. And until Manchester City are cleared, there is... I think it tarnishes Pep's legacy, and there is this metaphoric asterisk on his record until they are cleared. Because if they aren't cleared and they're found to essentially have overinflated sponsorship payments to allow the club to buy the best players to establish themselves as a European powerhouse, as a Premier League powerhouse, then I'm sorry, people aren't going to be comparing Pep Guardiola to Sir Alex Ferguson, because there is this asterisk. And so for the sake of Pep Guardiola's legacy, the result of the 115 hearing needs to come out as soon as possible. And I know for a fact that there are hundreds of thousands of fans. You see it online, you have it in conversations in the pub. There are still questions about what this means for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola. We'll get more into the conversation regarding Manchester City in terms of his replacement, Enzo Maresca. Lorenzo Bertoni is going to be joining us a little bit later, as well as Felipe Cardenas, to discuss Brazil's World Cup squad announcement, the inclusion of Neymar. Master and I disagree on this.
Well deserved.
Absolutely not.
Legend. Leyenda.
All that coming up on the talkSPORT S-Word channel.
The daily deep dive into the world of football. The S-Word from talkSPORT. Words here. Just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue. Every day, talkSPORT presents the S-Word.
Yeah, hello and welcome. Good morning from, if you're in the States, good afternoon. If you're here watching from the UK, you're listening to the talkSPORT S-Word with me, Max Scott, alongside Master Tesfatsi. And we've just been picking the bones over an absolutely huge 1-0 win to the Arsenal last night. And as well, that bombshell news about Pep Guardiola leaving Manchester City. We'll be discussing that a little bit later on as well in terms of his replacement, Enzo Maresca, with Lorenzo Bertoni. But now we turn our attention to the World Cup, because this morning Scotland released their World Cup squad for the summer, and I'm delighted to say, to mull all of this over with us, is former Scotland and Aberdeen striker Mark McGee. Mark, how are you, sir?
Good, guys. Great to be here. Great to have you.
Look,
great to have you.
There's been a lot of chat around this 26-man squad for Steve Clarke. I mean, what they've achieved in terms of World Cup qualification is incredible in and of itself. They're in arguably a group of death. You've got Brazil, you've got Morocco, Haiti, who Massa informs me are not, no mugs. But then
he's nodding too. He knows.
So it's going to be a difficult task for Scotland. 26-man squad. No Ollie McBurney, who's been banging goals in for Hull, who are in the Championship playoff final. Who they play, we are still yet to know. Is it going to be Southampton? Is it going to be Borough? But give us your reaction immediately to the squad that Steve Clarke's picked.
Well, I mean, the squad was going to be the squad that it is. There wasn't really a lot of choice. Maybe Ollie was the one that could have come in with a late run. It's obviously his run's been too late because he's not caught enough attention of Steve Clarke. So the squad is as we probably suspected.
Okay.
I'm curious from your vantage point, the expanded World Cup and also some of the conditions. I covered the Club World Cup last year in the heat as a pitchside reporter, and even as an American, it was hot. It was very difficult. How do you feel about the depths in the squad that you have, or at least Scotland has, in some of these outdoor conditions, going to Boston, going to Miami, where the humidity and the conditions are going to be a bit of a challenge that maybe a lot of players aren't used to?
Yeah, but I think that the fact that we have the first two games in Boston's a bit of an advantage, because I don't think the temperatures are going to be excessive there. You know, they'll be like a normal sort of summer in England. So I don't think that'll be a problem. I think for other teams who are playing further south, then it might be a bit of a problem in those particularly playing at altitude. You know, so but for Scotland, I think they've won a watch there in the sense that they're playing their first two games in Boston.
Yeah, and then last one in Miami, I believe it's the Brazil-Miami game, I think it is.
Brazil-Miami, and even then, you know, what's the average temperature there at that time? About 34 or something like that, you know.
Trust me,
yeah,
you will be sweating within the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Far cry from the Scottish climate.
I won't be sweating.
Even in Boston, I can say, as someone who's been
really.
it can, the Northeast, it can get very, very treacherous.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, it is only the beginning of June, you know, so another month's time, and I think by the final stages of the competition, then temperatures will be getting higher. But I don't think it needs to be a factor too much that we're going to dwell on. I think that, you know, they'll be hydrated, they'll have all the supplements, they'll have all the protection they need. So I don't think we should worry about that too much.
And you'd imagine, you know, there's been lots of stories about sort of the England players investing in hyperbaric chambers, saunas, doing all sorts of prep to prepare. That's going to be exactly the same for the Scotland players. They're going to be as prepared as they can for the first World Cup in, you know, almost a generation, right?
I mean, I've heard, you know, them talking about the fact they're taking their own beds or they're taking mattresses. They've done that before. That happens all the time, you know. Going to be back to South Africa, I remember the stories that came out about how they prepared the rooms with their photographs of their families, and, you know, it's fantastic what they do for the players.
And also the amount of money that's going to cost, that it costs to take a national team, notwithstanding the training camps, notwithstanding all that sort of stuff, but, you know, paying for, I don't know, framed pictures of your wee Babbitt and sticking it on the wall in your hotel room in 3 different locations, all of that sort of stuff. The logistics behind it is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, the players these days are, I don't mean they're demanding overtly, but, you know, the standards that they're used to at their football clubs, you know, particularly the Premier League clubs, the elite clubs, you know, the standards of stuff that they enjoy is just frightening, and they expect it to be replicated when they go and play for the national team. So, you know, they have to go to that extent. And of course, the rewards are huge, you know, if those little marginal gains, you know, make you that little bit better, that, you know, you get a better result.
You didn't have hyperbaric chambers and
Well,
you didn't have hydration tablets back in your day?
We had the North Sea, which...
and I imagine a different type of hydration post-match.
Particularly Alec Ferguson used to enjoy sending us down there. You know, that was always the quick solution. You know, I've got a swollen ankle, North Sea. You know, you know, it was pretty chilly, I can assure you. You know, so you didn't need an ice bath, that was for sure.
Did it do the job, or how was it?
Absolutely did the job. You know, I think the boys, you know, used to detest it, but they went in there and, we got the benefits of those low temperature plunges.
I want to ask you, as we're talking about that, you know, I've been able to watch obviously a lot of documentaries and obviously enjoying the Sir Alex and Ferguson era of Manchester United, but seeing the documentaries of understanding the Aberdeen era, I'd love to understand from your vantage point what that was like, and how were those moments of being on the ground with him every single day, being with the first player that he brought in as well. How How was that bond in 1979 built in the time that you were at Aberdeen?
Yeah, well, an amazing thing. He took me to. He met me at a hotel in Glasgow. I'd never been to Aberdeen, so I'd only ever played in. I played at. I was playing Newcastle at the time, but I hadn't played in a team that had ever played in Aberdeen before I went to Newcastle. So I met him in Glasgow and a hotel. Aberdeen were down playing a game, so I met him in a hotel, and I went into the room with him, and he said to me. He said, I want to win. This is one of the things he said. I want to win a European trophy within 5 years. So I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. You've not won the league for 25 years. You've not won the cup for 12 years. And before you do, win a European cup, you've got to do one of them first of all, And I remember listening to him, and believe it or not, by the time I came out of that room, I've told people, by the time I came out of that room, I believed what he said, that we could win a trophy within 5 years, and secondly, I felt a better player already. Just by what he said to me he was going to do for me, and what he saw in me, and what was wrong with my game, and what he could put.
What
right.
was it? Why was it? Why did you feel that way? Why did he feel so convincing?
Because I heard what he was saying rang true with me. The things he was telling me that I wasn't doing were the things I knew that I wasn't doing, and I wanted to do better. And the things that that he accentuated, the positives were the things I knew I could do well, and that he was recognising them. So that belief that I got from the fact he understood me was a huge thing, and the fact he was saying they could win a European trophy within 5 years, you could have even just went away and thought he's bonkers, and forget it. But no, I came out of there believing him, and of course we won it within 4 years.
It is an unbelievable sort of for want of a better phrase, claim to fame that you were the first signing of that Sir Alex era at Aberdeen. Obviously, we've all seen the sort of news that he's been sort of struggling with his health recently. Of course, everybody at talkSPORT sends our best to him. I mean, I know that you're still in you've still got a good relationship with him. Have you heard much from him?
Well, we do it through a group chat, a WhatsApp group chat that the Aberdeen team of our era, the European winning team. And particularly Archie Knox, who was his assistant obviously for all those years, he's the sort of conduit. So he's in close touch with Sir Alec and his family, and he's the one that updates us. And the last update is that he's okay.
Good. It's beautiful to hear, because we hear about the modern teams having group chats together, and it's great to hear. How did that group chat come together? How would you guys?
Well, it mainly came about because it was, believe it or not, 40th anniversary of us beating Real Madrid a couple of years ago. I can't believe it, but it was, and therefore there was a lot going on over a whole year. So we needed some sort of communication tool, and as much as we're all a bunch of old fogies, we do understand WhatsApp. That was about our limit. So we used that, and we had a great year of celebrations. I mean, it shows you, 40 years later, they're still dancing in the streets. 40 years after beating Real Madrid, they're still celebrating it. And it's like the Villa boys at the moment, and the Palace and that. They need to realise, how important this is, and they'll be the same in 40 years' time. They'll be having dinners and celebrations to celebrate what might happen.
You're speaking to a Forest fan who, of course, we were 90 minutes off a European final, but we're still dining out on those two European Cups under Cloughy, and hearing you speak about Fergie and how he managed to convince you and how he drew out another level in players reminds me of all of the legends that I've heard speak about Brian Clough in terms, and he said it, I do believe in fairies, he does believe in miracles, and that's sort of lived on in infamy for Forest fans, as in the miracle men.
And part of a manager, I mean, I was a manager for it was 985 games, and part of my job was always to make you, the player, feel as if you're the best you can be. You got to feel how good a player you are, and that's my job. And he was brilliant at that. He kept you down and he picked you up and he built you, but ultimately he made you feel a better player than you'd ever felt. Now, for instance, talking about the Scotland squad at this moment in time, that's something that Steve Clarke's got to do for this lot. He's got to make them believe that they are the best of what they can be, and bring out the best in what they possibly can be in order to go there and do as well as they can potentially do.
It's a tough ask, as we said. It is considered the group of death, with Morocco obviously making it to the semifinal last year, Brazil regardless of what we think about this roster with Brazil, it's still Brazil. And then this Haiti team that can be feisty, can be pesky.
Wow, you know, I almost get into a fight, I think, with Simon Jordan earlier about it. Of course, Simon's not the biggest Scotland fan, but you know, I said to him, you know, and I wasn't sort of priming it for defeat. I was just saying, you know, they've got a couple of guys up front, Haiti, who are monsters. You know, and if you end up in a fight with them, you lose the fight. You know, so we have to be prepared, Scotland, to be sensible and to be intelligent how we defend against them. And then if we do, and then if we have the sort of energy and the sort of movement that we saw in the game, for instance, when they qualified at Hampden last year, then we can beat Haiti fairly comfortably, get the first goal. The game could be over by half time. But if we end up in a fight, then watch out, because they are a big, strong, dedicated team. They've qualified, possibly deserve more credit than even Scotland, having qualified the way they did. Unbelievable that those guys have done. And when you see them, the way they're responding to it, they're up for it. So Scotland have to be ready.
One of the things that Steve Clarke has got going for him, in my opinion, is he's got a great blend of sort of experience. You've got the likes of Jack Hendry, Grant Hanley, Angus Gunn, who's been around a long time. But you've also got top European quality. John McGinn, Scott McTominay, who's done an incredible job, I think, sort of redefining his career over in Serie A. But then you've also got this sort of headline of this 19-year-old wonder kid, Finlay Curtis, who is a Rangers sort of player. He's been on loan at Kilmarnock, scored 5 in the last 9. What can you tell us about him? As an Englishman, I've still got trauma and nightmares of Theo Walcott. Why was he picked when he didn't even play? All that sort of stuff. Do you think is this about development, or is this actually we can stick this guy in and he can do a job for us?
I think it's about that. I think, of course, it will be part of his development in the next World Cup, in the next Euros. He'll be a better player for it, the experience. But there's no doubt in my mind that in this world today, you need a sort of mercurial player. You need somebody that can beat somebody that can unlock something. You know, you need that player when teams are so well organised, including Haiti, but particularly Morocco. You know, the way they set up is very, very difficult to break down. So you need a player that can take somebody out of the game, that can go past somebody, or can make a pass that takes somebody out of the game. And I think there's a place for, you know, a player like him. Yeah, definitely.
Am I right in saying that you talk about that mercurial talent, although John McGinn is, for me, the best player that you've got, right? I mean, I watch him week in, week out. I watched him absolutely turn Forest over at Villa Park. Hats off to him, unbelievable. But isn't Scott McTominay that guy at the minute for Scotland in terms of what he's managed to do for the national team?
I think that, you know, in particular, we know he can get goals. You know, so you need to have goals in your team. You know, if you add up the number of goals on average and it comes to 0, you're not getting very many goals. You know,
simple maths, isn't it?
In terms of
I don't know why I was so bad at it. It's cool.
The average number of goals that players score. So, you know, he ups that quite a bit. John can get a goal as well, of course. So in that area, we've got probably our 2 best players. You know, the fullbacks, we can argue, you know, Andy Robertson and Tierney, and, you know, so there's arguments for a few of them, but John and Scott really are the 2 that are going to take us to the knockout stages. There's no doubt about it.
You said something, I just want to touch back on Sir Alex Ferguson, because you said something that I've been bookmarking in my head. When you said Sir Alex Ferguson understood you and that meant a lot to you and was able to motivate you, how was he able to do that, and how different was that from an approach from other managers at the time?
Well, I think that I felt that, you know, the managers I had almost, you know, to a point, took a brush and painted everybody with the same brush, same motivation, same drive. Good, you know, they were good, I had good managers, but they kind of treated everybody with the same, you know, story, if you like. Whereas Sir Alex was able to individually kind of you know, the message you got was bespoke, you know, privately, on the side, whatever, you know, a quiet word here, quiet word there, but, you know, anything he said to you, it rang true. You know, if it was good, great. If it was negative, you knew he was right. You know, so you had to put it right, you know. But there was a thing about him that one of the Neville brothers, I think it was Gary Neville, said some time ago, and I remember thinking, he's nailed it, you know. And it was something I had thought, but I wasn't able to put it in any words for ages. But what he said was basically that when you play for someone like Sir Alex, but in particular, obviously, my experience was with Sir Alex, as was his, you're playing for him. And you're answering to him. And when you go through that door on a Saturday, there's only one person you're letting down. If you don't play well or you miss a chance or that, it's him. You don't worry about your parents. You don't worry about your family. You don't worry about the fans. You are trying to please him. And if you don't please him, he had a brilliant ability of, you know that thing that it's worse when your father is disappointed in you than angry with you.
Yeah.
Well, he made you feel as if he was disappointed in you, so that could really shock you, So you were playing for him and he made you feel that, and therefore it was very personal, and that was great motivation.
If I could follow up with that real quick, because obviously your managerial career spanned back for decades. What were you able to take away from that experience as you became a manager yourself?
Lots of things. You don't necessarily lots of specific things, but you meld into the guy that you are through the influences you've had. So Sir Alec, other managers as well, Jim Smith and Benny Rooney, and I worked at Hamburg for 2 years with Ernst Happel and Günter Netzer, and so all these guys, have an influence. But obviously Sir Alec was the biggest influence in me in my career. And if there's one, I learned one lesson, that something happened between him and I that really I should have got the sack, and instead of that he forgave me, he forgot it.
What was it?
I can't really tell you.
I'm doing my job as a journalist. I'm curious what it was.
You need to buy my book if I ever write it. And it's one of those things that it's very personal, and I don't feel I have the right to tell it. It's for him to tell if he wants to. But there was.
But what was the response from that moment?
Well, from that moment was, forget it. It's done, it's dusted. And what that brought to me was when I became a manager, no matter what a player done or said, I always thought twice before reacting. So I didn't just, he's done this, so bang. It was always, wait a minute, what's behind it? Why has he done that? What's happened? And think it through and always be prepared to kind of, rationalise it, which he done. I really should have been, my career should have been over. But it wasn't, because of the attitude that he took, and I took that on into my management, and it was a great lesson for me.
We're going to have you back on, hopefully, and we can hear the rest of these details on the show.
Yeah.
Whenever you write that book. If you need an author, or if you need somebody to write it,
okay.
My service is available.
Mark, absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. You're going to be out for talkSPORT during the World Cup as well, so you're going to be hearing a lot more from you.
I hope so, yeah. I'm going to be out there. I'm so looking forward to it, not just the Scotland games, obviously, but covering games like France and Senegal, I think it is. And
that'll be a good one.
Fantastic games, So, and at the venues, all the, Miami and Boston and New York and all that East Coast. So, yeah.
If you need any food recommendations, anything, more than happy.
I might need a bagman and maybe a water carrier. If you two are available.
Little towel rag.
I'll give you my email address.
There's no Baltic Sea or North Sea there, but we got the Atlantic Ocean. So
exactly.
For those ailments, Mark, absolutely brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, mate. Mark McGee, the first signing of Sir Alex Ferguson in that historic Aberdeen era. He's going to be out in the World Cup for talkSPORT. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to Lorenzo Bertoni, talking about Enzo Maresca as a potential replacement for Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. You're listening to the talkSPORT S-Word YouTube channel.
Around here, we only use the F word. talkSPORT presents the S word. show for people who love football in North America. And I mean the proper kind, where you only use your feet. The S Word from talkSPORT.
Welcome back in. Good morning to everyone listening in America. Good afternoon, everyone here in London. This is the S Word, which just had a great segment before the break.
Unbelievable.
Mark McGee, tremendous stories, giving his preview for Scotland and how they'll do in a very difficult group in the World Cup, but also sharing some incredible tales with Sir Alex Ferguson, and what a treat that was.
You feel like you're in the presence of greatness, because somebody that's worked so closely with arguably the icon of the game, or Mount Rushmore on anything, for somebody that's been so close to Sir Alex Ferguson, to hear those stories and to understand the impact that he has on the people around him is just incredible. And to reiterate, as we've already said, of course, everybody's thoughts of talkSPORT go out to Sir Alex Ferguson, who's not been in the best of health, and of course we're hopeful that he'll be back to full strength as soon as possible.
Absolutely, and you'll be able to hear more of Mark here during the World Cup right here on talkSPORT. But let's give a preview of what's going on tonight in the Premier League, as we got two big matches here that could determine not only just a relegation battle, but also the Premier League title, as well as Chelsea will be hosting Tottenham in a London derby at Stamford Bridge, and Bournemouth will be hosting Manchester City, as Bournemouth is also playing for Champions League. Let's not discount that reality, as well as Manchester City as well needs 3 points here to stay alive in the final week of the Premier League season. Max, I'm going to turn to you. I guess we'll go to Bournemouth first. Let's start with the top of the table. Arsenal getting the job done last night. We're going into this situation with Bournemouth at home in great form, mind you, taking on a Manchester City team that has also been in great form.
Yeah, fresh off the back of a final as well.
Tired legs. Final. Tired legs, quick turnaround, going to Wembley. It took 6 hours to get there from Pep, according to him, after the match because of the train situation. Then having to go back to Manchester, now having to go to Bournemouth. A lot of travel in a short amount of time. Coming off the announcement that Pep will be stepping down at the end of the season. Where do you think the mindset will be tonight with Manchester City?
Look, regardless of the context, regardless of the challenges facing Manchester City in trying to overtake Arsenal in very difficult circumstances, this Manchester City team, because of Pep, are built for success. Even though you've got an Antoine Semenyo who's never won a Premier League, even though you've brought Mark Gahey in who's never won a Premier League.
A lot of them haven't.
In a similar way to talking about Sir Alex Ferguson, Pep Guardiola oozes winning and oozes success, and that translates to players. And so while it's a massive challenge, while Bournemouth are in incredible form, the form team in the Premier League. I lived in Bournemouth for 8 years. I've got a real soft spot for the football.
I heard it's lovely. I've never been down there, but I've heard
it is the hidden gem of the UK coasts. Everyone raves about Brighton. It's a stony beach. It's a little bit smelly. The litter there is terrible. Bournemouth, 8 miles of golden sands. And what the football club has achieved is similar to Brighton, right? It's a tiny football stadium, tiny sort of infrastructure. But for them to be on the precipice of European football, maybe even Champions League football, is unbelievable. And Pep Guardiola knows that this is going to be a massive challenge. And he's admitted that to talkSPORT in the last couple of days when asked, after winning the FA Cup, League Cup double, can you go on and win the treble? And he's saying, look, we've got to get past Bournemouth. This is a massive challenge. And I also think we're all talking about, well, Pep Guardiola's leaving the football club now. What's the extra added sort of incentives for the players? What about Bournemouth? Andoni Iraola, the man that has taken this club to the next level. When Eddie Howe left, people wrote Bournemouth off saying they were going to get relegated easily, right? And he's taken them to the next level. These players are also playing for him. So I think that it's going to be a fascinating matchup. I can't wait to be in North London tonight. You're going to be there to sample the atmosphere for what it means for the red side of North London as well.
Yeah, I'll be in North London. I don't know what pub I'll be at, but I'll be there because I think the Premier League title race, it comes to
What makes you so convinced about that?
I just think the form that Bournemouth's been in, I think that's the biggest reason behind it. You looked at the schedule going into the run-in, and clearly Arsenal had a more favorable schedule, and there was 2 fixtures that you were looking at potentially for City to drop points in. One of them was at Everton, which they did, able to salvage a point, but they dropped 2 points. And then this Bournemouth fixture, where the congestion of the schedules, for better or for worse, because of the FA Cup final and because having to push some of these fixtures around to fit the semifinal and the final, it's created this logjam for Manchester City right now. And so when you looked at the logistical issues, when you looked at the team they were facing and where they were playing at, I feel very confident that Bournemouth will get the job done tonight, because as you mentioned, Areola is an incredible, incredible manager. It goes even beyond Semenyo. This summer, all the players that left, particularly in the back line.
Yeah, mate.
Hoyson left. Kirkaz, which I know he hasn't been in the greatest form this season at Liverpool, but he was someone that was spectacular last season at Bournemouth. And you were just questioning and wondering, can this team stop anyone?
Yeah.
And then when Semenyo left, can this team even score goals?
I know.
And the recruiting process of what Bournemouth has done
unbelievable.
Has been incredible. Being able to find the right players that fit Areola's system, finding the players that believe in Areola and what they're telling him to do or what he's telling them to do, it has been nothing short of spectacular. And it's producing other great players. Alex Scott, for instance, has been tremendous to see him watch and blossom as well. Krupi, as we've talked about before the match as well, he's been incredible to watch. All of these...
Krupi's done absolute bits for my fantasy draft team, by the way.
He
unbelievable.
Might score tonight.
Yeah.
There's so many of these guys that just... You're wondering where they're going to come from. And their recruiting process, as much credit as we've given Brighton for their recruiting process over the last couple of years, and the analytics and the data and them being able to find some obscure players in Ecuador and all of a sudden being gone for £100 million. Bournemouth is doing the same.
I can feel the confidence coming from you, Master.
I'm very calm.
It's confidence urging on arrogance.
But it's not arrogant. I'm not over here.
But what I would say is you're well within your rights. And the reason I can feel that confidence, and the reason I'm not going to completely poo-poo it, is because Arsenal have been trying to rid themselves of this bottlers tag for about 4 years, right? And yes, there were times this season when it looked like Arsenal were going to bottle it. But I think the reality is that City have been the bottlers most of the season. You know, and I know they had a great April, but they're the ones I think that have demonstrated the most inconsistency between Manchester City and Arsenal.
But you know why? Everyone talks about the experience of Pep Guardiola and some of these players, but if you look at that roster, as you mentioned, Gay's never experienced this before.
Yes.
Turkey's never experienced this before. The guys that have, Rodri has been in and out of the lineup throughout this whole time because of his fitness issues, even subbed off, in the 67th minute, I think it was, in the FA Cup final. So when you're looking around, you're seeing Haaland being that rah-rah voice, the guy that's trying to galvanize. Even after they drop points against Everton, he's the one going around telling players, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. So other guys have had to step up in roles and positions that, they've never had to be in before from the top down. And so, meanwhile, Arsenal, for better or for worse, have been in this situation for now 4 straight years.
Can I ask you a question just on that sort of rallying voice? You talk about Haaland, you talk about Declan Rice. On Declan Rice, for me, he is the captain without the armband.
Yeah, probably has been.
Is Mikel Arteta ruthless enough to next season do what every single football fan, and surely every single Arsenal fan knows is the right thing to do, and to give him the armband?
I thought he should have done it this year.
Of course he should have done.
If we're being quite honest, going into this season, it felt like there was maybe a tug and pull last year when Declan first got there. You saw him galvanizing players, really holding them accountable from the start. And Odegaard's voice, with the injuries that he had, made it a bit challenging. But you weren't going to slap the armband on him immediately because obviously Bukayo Saka's there, Gabriel is there, even David Raya, other guys with experience that have a prominent voice among the players. But I think it's without question. Even in the rut they were in, it was Declan Rice, according to these reports. He's the one that was holding everyone accountable.
So you want it, but will he do it? Because for me, when you talk about fine margins, when you talk about elite success, for Arsenal to go and sort of essentially establish a dynasty, for Arsenal to go and try to emulate what Sir Alex did with Manchester United, what Pep Guardiola's done with Manchester City, you have to be ruthless and make those fine margin decisions. My fear for Arsenal is that Mikel Arteta will say, why change a winning formula? Of course we're not going to change it. That's what I predict he will say. But he has to make Declan Rice captain next season.
Here's my thing, and this translates whether it's this beautiful game, if it's the NFL, the NBA. I've covered sports for 14 years now in various roles. Been in many locker rooms, more than I can remember. I've forgot more games than I can remember that I've covered. You need multiple leaders. Just because you have the armband, again, the significance of the armband or being even a captain in the NBA or whatever the case may be, like you go inside a clubhouse, you go inside a locker room, there's always going to be factions within there, whether it's because the languages they speak, because of the positions they play, the region they grew up in. There is always going to be groups within the entirety of a locker room. And so as much as, yes, Declan Rice has a big voice, you're still going to need Odegaard's voice too.
Of course.
So
I don't disagree with that.
Personally, Declan Rice should have the armband. I think it should happen. I hope it happens this summer and we can move on in that direction. However, that's not going to mitigate Odegaard's voice at all.
No.
If he's still on the team, if he's still there, whatever his role may be, he's still going to have a voice. He's still going to be one of the leaders. It's like Bukayo Saka is not more or less a leader because he's not wearing the captain armband. David Raya is not more or less a leader because he's not wearing the captain armband. Gabriel's not more or less a leader because he's not wearing the captain armband. So I know a lot of significance is put in that. There's obviously roles that are played in terms of who talks to the official and all that stuff, but there's a leadership group for a reason. So everyone has a role and identity to play. And so
So you're saying it's not the end of the world if he's not?
I think fans make a bigger deal of those kind of things than the reality of the situation is. That's just my personal opinion. There may be former players that think this is ridiculous, fans that think that's ridiculous. That's just my perspective from what I've understood.
There's an argument to say if you win the league, and I think Mikel Arteta will say this, why change that? But this is a conversation that will rumble on without a doubt throughout the summer. But it's not just the Manchester City-Bournemouth game tonight that we've got all eyes on. At the other end of the table, Spurs travelling to Chelsea, a place where they never win.
We got 30 seconds to talk about this one.
Well, give me your score.
Rightfully so. Not giving much time to
give me your score prediction.
Honestly, I think Tottenham get a draw tonight, and I think they're safe. I think North London. Give me my camera right now. Okay, this is going to be the craziest night in North London's history because not only is Arsenal going to win the title, but Tottenham will also be safe tonight. So depending on what neighborhood you're in North London, you will see red flares and white flares going off, as there will be plenty of reason to celebrate, as Arsenal will capture the Premier League title for the first time in 22 years. And Tottenham, for better or for worse, will remain in the Premier League.
And maybe there'll be harmony on the streets of North London.
Let's not go
Red shirts, white shirts, all gathering together to celebrate Premier League survival.
Stay on your side,
and a Premier League title.
Tottenham fans, stay on your side. Arsenal fans will stay on our side, and we'll have a peaceful evening. I'll leave it at that.
You're listening to the S Word on talkSPORT. Next up, we're going to be speaking to Football Italia editor Lorenzo Bertoni on that breaking news regarding Pep Guardiola and his potential successor, Enzo Maresca.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle, talkSPORT presents the S Word. S Word, featuring Will Gavin and Master Tess Fassian. And a squad of big-name contributors. The S Word from talkSPORT.
Yes, hello, welcome to the S Word here on talkSPORT. Good morning. If you are joining us from the United States, good afternoon. If you're from the UK, what a show we've had so far, but we're only getting started because Pep Guardiola is of course expected to leave Manchester City at the end of the season. 10 years in charge, 20 trophies, unprecedented success, and the man expected to take over, that we expect, is Enzo Maresca on a 3-year deal. Tough shoes to fill, Master. Come on.
I know a lot of people fear the idea of walking into the shadows of a legend, whether it's Sir Alex Ferguson, whether it's Arsene Wenger, and now Pep Guardiola, as Enzo Maresca is going to do. But hey, man, I don't know if you could have tasked a better manager to replace Pep Guardiola. I think he's a really, really solid manager.
Well, I agree, because he's cut from the same cloth, right? And this is the challenge that Manchester United didn't have. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because there is someone waiting in the wings who knows just about everything there is to know about Italian football. Of course, Enzo Maresca is Italian himself. So to give us a bit more insight on the man himself, I'm delighted to say we've got Football Italia editor Lorenzo Bertoni joining us. Lorenzo, how are you doing, mate?
Hi guys, I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, we've alluded to it here just now. We've been talking about this off air, and I think rightly, this job, the now vacant Manchester City job, you could say, is being described as an impossible David Moyes-esque task. Do you agree with this assertion that what Enzo Maresca is likely walking into is almost impossible? Or, like Master, do you subscribe to the belief that this is the perfect fit for the job?
Well, if there's a man that's a perfect fit for the job, is surely Enzo Maresca, because he knows the environment, he knows the coach he's replacing, of course, very well, having won trophies with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. And I would say he knows the environment of English football very well, perhaps even better than Italian football, because we'll get on this later on probably, but Pep Guardiola is kind of an atypical Italian coach, because he has achieved more success abroad than in Italy, both as a coach and as a football player. But of course, the scale of the task that he has ahead of him is pretty hard, because he's replacing one of the best coaches ever in world football. And of course, it's not going to be easy to replace Pep Guardiola, but he starts from a very solid base. And if there's a man for the job, I think it's Enzo Maresca.
Lorenzo, how is this news being received in Italy? Because I feel like a lot of the Italian managers, they kind of go through this Serie A roulette where they rotate through the different clubs within Serie A. But Enzo Maresca being able to land gigs with Chelsea and now Manchester City, what is the perception of Enzo Maresca in Italy and him stepping into this position?
Well, of course, very proud, because he is joining one of the best clubs in the world, and as you said, it's something special for him. It's something special for his career, and it's something special for Italy as well. There is a few media still a little bit cautious about announcing the news, but he's going to be the Pep Guardiola replacement at Manchester City. So currently, as I said, there's a lot of talks about his methods. There's a lot of talks about his experience that he's had, especially at Chelsea and Leicester City. And the experience that Enzo Maresca has had in Italy, I'm not saying Serie A, because he's never coached somehow in Serie A, is quite reduced, because he only coached Parma in 2021 in Serie B, second division, and was sacked after just a few games in charge. We're famous in Italy for not being too patient with the coaches, especially the young ones. On the one side, we want to have a new playing style, exciting football, exciting and a modern way of playing. But on the other side, we always perhaps sometimes too focused on the results as well. So at the moment, there is, I would say, we're all pretty proud that Maresca is getting the Manchester City job, but at the same time, we're also looking at it like, is he going to make it? Is he not going to make it? Because here in Italy, he hasn't had a great career. But again, this is something that has been a common trait in Maresca's career, both as a coach and as a football player.
What are the concerns in Italy that he may not make it? Why is there potentially the pessimism that Enzo Maresca may not make it?
Mostly because he's replacing Pep Guardiola. I mean, you're going to replace one of the best coaches out there. So I'm not saying there are concerns that Maresca is not going to make it, but at the moment, it's still going a little bit under the radar. There are a lot of updates in Serie A for Juventus, for Milan, for Inter as well, who have just won the double. So currently, this appointment, even if it's a big news, it's going a little bit under the radar, and I think it's going to be discussed further when the news is actually announced. There is also the Manchester City game tonight, so they're all waiting a little bit for Guardiola to officially confirm that he's leaving Manchester City, because moving forward with comments on Maresca, the focus is still a little bit more on Serie A and what's happening today in Italy, because there will be a lot of changes over the coming weeks. But is not concerned and is not going to make it. We're just aware that the scale of the task that he has ahead is big, mostly because he's replacing Guardiola, who's, I mean, many of us would like to have him as the Italy coach, even though it might be an impossible dream.
Lorenzo, we've got this situation where you've essentially got the master and his disciple. You've got, the disciple and then the original. You could argue that this is beneficial for a seamless transition when it comes to tactics. We know that Maresca's worked incredibly closely with Pep Guardiola. We know that he's already had success in a really chaotic system and chaotic culture at Chelsea. How do you think that it's going to play out? Do you think that there's going to be significant changes in terms of staff, in terms of players incoming in the summer? How do you think that he's going to settle into the shoes of Pep Guardiola?
I mean, probably not big changes from the very beginning, because he's stepping in a system and in an environment that has been the same for the last 10 years. But within these 10 years, there have been a lot of changes to Guardiola play style as well. So, I mean, Maresca left Manchester City a few years ago already, and there has been slight changes to the Manchester City playing style since Maresca left. And there are a few interviews from the past where Maresca spoke about Guardiola's work in Manchester City, and he actually praised Guardiola for changing his methods and changing his playing style through the years to be always on top and be always up there in English football and in European football as well. So I would assume he starts the job from where Guardiola left, and then getting to know the players a little bit more, getting his views on the transfer market as well. He's going to shape the team as he prefers, but I would expect, especially at the beginning, that he sticks to the basics set by Guardiola and then start developing slowly his play. There are already a few rumors linking Serie A as well. There is a player, Marco Palestra, who's, according to Sky Sport Italia, he's on Maresca's agenda, possibly for the future. He's one of the most exciting players that we have in Italy this season, and he's one of those that maybe Manchester City fans should look at for the summer, because he's one that, according to reports, according to Sky Sport, Manchester City will look at if Maresca gets the job.
You're talking about recruitment there, and I wanted to get onto that because it's undeniable that Pep Guardiola is a draw for a player, is an attraction for a player in and of itself, regardless of what football club he's managing. I would say Enzo Maresca doesn't have that. Now, of course, if you're a player like Elliot Anderson, let's say, who we know is wanted by both Manchester clubs, in the knowledge that Pep Guardiola is no longer going to be the manager, do you think that it weakens Manchester City in the transfer market in any way?
I mean, not necessarily, because if the structure remains the same, we're still talking about one of the best clubs in the world, the club that will always compete to win the Premier League and the Champions League. So, of course, not having Guardiola anymore is surely not ideal in terms of transfers, but at the same time, I don't think one player would pick or not pick Manchester City because Maresca or Pep Guardiola are there. If they present the right project to the players, then I'm quite sure the appeal of Manchester City would always be the same, regardless of the coach. Guardiola has to leave sooner or later, so it's something that has to happen.
But last time we saw Enzo Maresca with the Premier League side, obviously, was with Chelsea, and the friction and the way he left out the door. What do you think were the reasons for that, with the relationships that he had with the players? And is there a concern, I guess, with Italian managers that go outside the Serie A? You know, we saw what happened with Roberto De Zerbi at Marseille, obviously the infamous Antonio Conte situation with Tottenham. What do you feel is at stake for Italian managers with Enzo Maresca at Manchester City, considering what has happened with some of these examples of Italian managers, including Enzo, outside of Serie A?
Well, they're all quite different managers. I mean, De Zerbi especially is quite demanding on transfers, and Antonio Conte as well. I think that all these coaches, especially De Zerbi and Maresca, compared to Conte, they've had a quite successful coaching career outside Serie A, while Conte has won everything as a player, has won a lot as a coach, especially domestically here in Serie A with Inter, with Juventus, and lately with Napoli as well. It has a different status, Conte, compared to the others two, because Conte is a winner. For now, he's won trophies, while De Zerbi and Maresca, of course, Maresca has won the Conference League with Chelsea, has won the Club World Cup. So I would say he's a little bit in between Conte and Roberto De Zerbi. I see something common between De Zerbi and Maresca. There was a recent interview from the ex-Chelsea coach Maresca, now coming to Manchester City, saying that he feels more appreciated abroad than he does in Italy, because probably there is a little bit less pressure from the environment. But more than pressure, he mentioned one interesting thing, which is the club leaves you, I mean, you don't feel too much pressure many times from the club, because you feel you can do your job, you can show your ideas, and you don't have the daily or weekly pressure of getting a result. Most of times they focus on the big picture, they focus on long-term projects, and so this is where you can develop the most and you can show your ideas more as a coach. In Italy, he doesn't have that, and I think, again, his career explained this quite clearly, because he played for many Serie A clubs, including Juventus. He had great coaches like Carlo Ancelotti and Marcello Lippi, but when you ask Maresca about his role models in terms of coaching, he would mention Manuel Pellegrini, who was his coach at Sevilla when he won two UEFA Cup, which are now Europa League, and Pep Guardiola himself. So he has an influence coming from abroad, and he has an ability to understand different cultures as well, especially the Spanish and the English one, which again make him a sort of a typical Italian coach. So I would say that he has experience, of course, in England. So I would say that he would be able to settle in quite well in Manchester City, especially because he's worked for the club already.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to monitor, because obviously him coming off what happened at Chelsea, and now he's entering another big club in the Premier League, but not only any big club, but Manchester City having this dark cloud over them with 115 charges in terms of what's going on with financial fair play. How do you think Maresca, whatever the decision is, if there is a decision that happens, how do you think Maresca will be able to weather the storm if there is a significant punishment handed down on Manchester City?
Well, that would affect any coach anyway. Watching at these allegations from abroad, I'm always like once in a while I see the headlines in the English media, and then I'm always like, are they going to make a decision at some point, or are they not going to take a decision? Because in Italy we have a lot of scandals as well, but at some point at least we take a decision. In there I don't see that, and honestly I'm not 100% sure when they're going to take the decision. But regardless of that, if Maresca has the chance to go to Manchester City, of course he has to take it, regardless of whether they're punished or not. And so I think whenever if that does happen, then I think he will cope with it. He's going. I mean, he's not been involved in scandals, of course, but being Italian, he knows pretty well about scandals in football. So I'm sure he'll find a way to cope with it. But the starting point, being at Manchester City, I think would be pretty good for him.
I kind of think on this that this is actually, there's a lot less pressure on Enzo Maresca here when it comes to these charges. If they are deemed to be guilty of any number of them, and there's any punishment that comes their way, because ultimately he wasn't a part of it. So there's almost a fresh face. And I don't buy in necessarily to, you can call it theory, you can call it bordering on conspiracy. People say, well, Pep Guardiola knows the results here and therefore he's leaving because of that, because he wants to wipe his hands with it. I kind of think, Lorenzo, that's too much of a stretch. And actually for Manchester City, strategically, with an expectation that there has to be a result at some point when it comes to the 115 charges, it helps Manchester City's image, and it certainly helps the stability with the team, because the man in charge is fresh. He's not connected in any way to any potential previous sort of misgivings.
Yeah, and in a way, I mean, assuming they got a transfer ban, of course, there's always pressure in Manchester City. There's always pressure to win trophies. But if you start a season and if you can't sign any player, and of course you have less pressure than those who spend millions of pounds to get new players, to get new faces in. There are positives. There are some positives, even if there is a transfer ban, because in a way, as you said, you're going to have more stability. You're not going to sell your best players because you need to stick to them, because you can't buy new signings. And at the same time, you need to focus on those players, and you need to focus just on the pitch, and you just need to focus on what you have in your hands. And you have probably less pressure than those who will spend a lot of money and will have to come out on top because they've made big investments, and so they need to win trophies right away.
Well, we've seen that with Liverpool, haven't we,
I'm
Lorenzo?
not saying that would be helpful, but probably it might help get a little bit of pressure off his shoulders.
I agree with you. I think the sort of the culture that we've got at the minute of just constant incomings and outgoings. You look at sort of Arne Slot's most successful time at Liverpool was when he inherited a squad and essentially bought Chiesa for about 50 pence. And then this season we've seen a huge influx of players. And it's completely destabilised Liverpool, and now they're lacking in a football identity. And if there were to be a transfer ban, that could be the making of Enzo Maresca, because as Lorenzo says, you don't sell your best players, you keep them in-house, and then you develop your own culture with those players. I think that it's, it could work out really well for Maresca if that were to happen.
We'll see, Lorenzo. One thing that has not worked out for you, unfortunately, is the Italian men's national team. And once again...
We were always going to mention it, Lorenzo. We're sorry.
Yeah, we were... Go ahead. I feel like you have some thoughts on this. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I'm curious how you feeling once again to miss out on this World Cup. And if Pep Guardiola is watching this, would you like to sell him on the opportunity to coach the Italian national team, as you mentioned earlier? Give us your best pitch on why Pep Guardiola should take over the Italian national team.
I mean, just in Guardiola's case, I think you should not just take over the Italian national team. You should take over the whole system, because we don't just need a man who fixes the national team. We need a man who tells the chiefs up there, look, we need to work this way at the youth level. We need to develop players this way. The biggest problem, and it's something Maresca has talked about as well over the last few months, is that there is a gap between youth football and senior football that young players or those working behind the scenes are unable to fill. We have quality players, because we got Donnarumma, we got Calafiori, we got Tonali, but we don't have players that actually make the difference in the final third. We no longer have exciting wingers, exciting attacking midfielders. We start to having some decent centre forwards, but we lack those players who actually make the difference in modern football, are strong on one-to-ones. So yeah, if I have to sell the opportunity to Pep, please come and revolutionize everything. Just come and make Italian football your football. That would be amazing.
Would you like to see that?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Guardiola, of course, as the Italy coach. But again, I think it would need to be part of a bigger process. It would need to be part of something where he is the only coach who can do that. If we want to give this to a coach, like really start from the basic and say we need to work differently at the youth level. We need to have a different structure that helps young players develop and actually make it into high-level football, and not just players. I mentioned Donnarumma, I mentioned Calafiori, I mentioned Tonali, I mentioned Marco Palestra before, and he's a wing-back as well. We've been building generations of fullbacks, of central midfielders and central defenders as well. But we no longer have the quality. We no longer have those exciting wingers that sometimes win games on their own. So we need a way to make these players relevant again and give them the playing time and the confidence as well, the ability and the freedom to make mistakes, to lose the balls, to force the team to defend, but we need to take risks again. We no longer take risks, and this is what we got, 3 consecutive World Cups at home.
And even their best fullbacks, like Federico Di Marco, as great as he's been for Inter, unfortunately, has not done the same thing for the Italian national team. Lorenzo Bettoni, thank you so much for joining us here on the S Word. Really enjoyed your insight on Enzo Maresca, and hopefully you still have a good summer.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'll be watching football, unfortunately, not going to the US.
Well, we'll be watching football as well, as we'll be covering the World Cup all summer long. And we will continue right here on the S Word, because we will take a look at Brazil's national team, breaking it all down with Felipe Cardenas, who will join us after the break. This is the S Word on talkSPORT.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond. The S Word from talkSPORT. Kickoff to the full-time whistle. Don't say the S word. Say the F word. Football. The S word from talkSPORT.
You are back here with the S word on talkSPORT.
Big section coming up.
Big section. We got Big Max over here.
Yeah. You can't tell when I'm sat down, but I'm quite a big lad, actually.
I mean, also, you're a bit smaller than the guy who usually sits there.
Whoa, you said it, not me.
Hey,
you said it, not me, and he's listening.
I love you. I love you, Will. He's watching, of course, as we thank everyone else that is watching us on the YouTube channel as well, on talkSPORT and the talkSPORT, the S word. Get in touch with us. See, I screwed it up too here, Will. WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, X, YouTube, whatever you prefer. Check us out. Give us a like, comments. We'll get you involved in the show as we will get involved our next guest here. And we've had him on before, and he's one of my favorite insight journalists in the States, also pretty much around the world, when it comes to anything that has to do with South America, the U.S., or just having a great geopolitical understanding of this beautiful game. And who better to talk to about Brazil's national team squad announcement than the Athletics' own Felipe Cardenas, who joins us here on the S Word. Felipe, it's great to have you on again, and we'll just get straight to it because everyone is talking about Neymar is on Brazil's roster squad while João Pedro did not make the list. What did you think of the decision, and was it the right call by Carlo Ancelotti?
I mean, I was a bit surprised. I think 24 hours before the announcement, my gut was telling me that, maybe Neymar doesn't make the squad. And how does Carlo Ancelotti navigate that in Brazil? And you saw the reaction yesterday on the streets of Brazil. Neymar is still a godlike figure. And even listening to Carlo Ancelotti speak about João Pedro, you could hear the decision was very difficult. He called it a sad decision. He was very sad for João Pedro. It does seem like it potentially came down to these two players, Neymar and João Pedro, and who gets the nod here. I think Carletto, really read the room though. And if there's one manager in world football who, can manage big personalities, who has won titles with the biggest personalities in one dressing room, it's Carlo Ancelotti. Certainly, he sees this as an opportunity to bring in a star player like Neymar, potentially invigorate the squad, a squad that has been, in the dumps, several times leading up to this World Cup. It's a team that lost 6 times in World Cup qualifying. 6. There were 3 games in a row at one point, and we're really looking at elimination from this 2026 World Cup. So I think in reading the room, seeing that if I don't take Neymar, I will only answer questions about Neymar at the World Cup. If I take Neymar, I'm still answering those questions, but at least I probably have the press on my side. So I think in the end, it was a bit of PR, potentially a bit of pressure on Carlo to take Neymar to this World Cup.
Because we're split here on this desk. I thought Neymar should have made this. Max, on the other hand, did not. But the fact of the matter is, and let's just be honest here, and this pains me to say because I love watching Brazil. They were the squad that made me fall in love with this game. Brazil's not winning the World Cup. This roster is just simply not good enough. It's probably the worst Brazilian roster I've seen in my lifetime. However,
I mean, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. They don't scare you, certainly.
No, they don't. And
well, they certainly don't. They certainly don't scare us. Well, certainly don't scare me with a 34-year-old that hasn't played for the national team in 3 years. And Felipe, I will always bow to your sort of superior knowledge of football at that side of the world. But I just get the feeling that Brazil have opted for a cult of personality over quality or over meritocracy. And I understand the PR. I understand the pressure. I understand that in Brazil it's much more about feeling, and we know what figure Neymar is in the game. I just can't help but feel it's the wrong footballing decision.
What has Pedro done with the national team? Felipe, tell me, like what?
Yeah, no, I mean, not much. And again, like you go back to the Club World Cup last summer, João Pedro, there are some people around the world like, who's this guy? Like some of the goals he scored for Chelsea at that Club World Cup really was like a coming out party for him. And you immediately were thinking, okay, that's a player you just slot into this Brazil national team, a team that really needs goal scoring, needs versatility in the attack, needs options and alternatives than the ones that you're used to seeing. But we talk about this. You look at the Brazil squad, and other than the shirt and the history and the 5 stars above that crest, you're looking at a team that a lot of squads around the world think we can beat Brazil. That happened in South American World Cup qualifying. As a Colombian, every time we face Brazil, there's tension. You feel like, okay, it's Brazil. But over the last few years, the thought was, we can beat these guys. We can get, if we play the right game, if we don't shudder from that yellow shirt and we're not really petrified when Brazil comes at us, they're a team that can beat you. Now, with Neymar, to Master's point, yes, you're comparing 15, 20 goals for João Pedro in the Premier League in Europe to 15 games that Neymar has played for Santos. Some games were forgettable. Some games had some really interesting highlights where you see some of that magic. And I think the one thing that Neymar has is the shirt has never weighed heavily for him. Yes, he hasn't won that World Cup. We don't think he's going to win a World Cup. This isn't the squad that's going to go to the final at MetLife Stadium and beat the likes of France, Spain, Portugal, and others. But with Neymar, there's just that extra chip. There's that extra boost, I think, when he's on the squad. And Casemiro, you saw him, talking to Rio Ferdinand this week saying, we need a guy like Neymar. So like clearly he's not jumping into a dressing room and dividing it. I think he is revered, perhaps the same way Argentina looked at Messi in 2022, and maybe not the same way, but he's still a player that the squad, I think, is going to see in that dressing room and say, all right, we still have Neymar.
So you talk about him being in the squad, and I totally hear you when you explain how Ancelotti would rather be answering questions about him being involved in that squad than not being there at all, and the distraction that it would be if he hadn't have picked him in the squad entirely. I get that. Is he going to actually play? Is he going to feature heavily, having not played for 3 years, having been snubbed by Ancelotti previously? Is he going to see much time on the pitch?
Well, if you listen and you take what Ancelotti said yesterday, you can either take it with a grain of salt, or you're listening to a manager, like I said before, that what he says typically goes. It doesn't matter the last name on the shirt. So he's saying, Neymar is just another player. He's another soldier. He may play, he may not. He may come off the bench. He may be a solution depending on the opponent that they're facing. If you're throwing out Neymar, this version of Neymar, and he's your starting. Positionally, he's going to play, behind the striker now. He's no longer a winger. So you're playing him in a position where you're expecting him to be a 10, to be a center forward, to be on the ball, to be active in a World Cup where athleticism, speed, and honestly, youth is going to always trump tactics, in my opinion, at the international level in a major tournament like a World Cup. So, Neymar doesn't have the stamina or the endurance or even the knees to be the guy that's really going 90 minutes and giving you everything. I think he could be a great option depending on who is sitting in front of them. He comes on, the stadium is going to go crazy. Brazil's going to go crazy. But he's not your number one guy anymore. He should not be wearing the captain's armband. He can't be Brazil's savior at this World Cup. In that sense, I agree with you.
But a lot of the youngsters are going to play for him. They idolize him. They want to bring this World Cup for him. He brings the spark. He brings the energy. I think when you see how they revere him, that gives them something to play for. Because as I talked about, I want to go through the rest of this roster because you talked about that Neymar doesn't have the legs. But I look at this midfield, and there's only one player that's the youngest player on this midfield is Danilo at 25 years old, who plays for Botafogo. I mean, you've got Casemiro, you got Fabinho, Bruno Guimaraes, Lucas Paqueta, and again, some of these big names, obviously, but for whatever reason, they have not performed to their capabilities when they play for Brazil. This midfield is downright awful.
And you know what? It's like, I don't think it's the worst part of the squad. Who are their fullbacks? Who are Brazil's fullbacks? Like for years, you knew right away who's playing at left fullback, who's playing at right fullback, who that back four is. And you look at Brazil, like Marquinhos, Gabriel, perfect. Write them in Sharpie right now. But aside from that, you might have Danilo, who is a has-been, at this level. But another player, like a glue guy in that dressing room, a player that I think Brazil just trusts. They trust him to be an experienced winger, or is certainly a fullback on that right side. You might have a player like Ibanez, who plays in the Saudi league, playing. You might have another player playing for Roma, for Flamengo, Botafogo. Like the world is going to look at Brazil and say, I only know 2 or 3 guys, and that is bizarre. That to me says everything about Brazil. Yesterday, the graphics on social media, the big names left out. And it's like, Anthony, Thiago Silva, João Pedro.
Santos,
yes, like players, but that tells you everything about Brazil these days. And, I think Ancelotti, having signed again, extending his relationship with Brazil through 2030, certainly, maybe he knows a lot more than we don't about what the potential of the squad is and maybe what is coming after this World Cup. But it really sets up for 2026 in a difficult group, a difficult side of the bracket, depending on where they end up. Like, you're really going to be testing this Brazil side, their legs throughout the tournament. And again, Neymar, when I think about the name, this is why I struggle when people say that these guys are washed. It's like, I don't like to hear that, because this is, when you talk about Messi and Ronaldo, who was always third? Who was always that third name? It was Neymar. And so they are magical players, but can they do it right now at 34 plus? I think that's going to be difficult for these players.
I'm counting 11 players of this 26-man roster that is 30 years or older. With this expanded format in the World Cup, with the talks of the heat and the conditions that some of these matches will be played in outdoors, how on earth will Brazil be able to survive this with 11 players 30 years and older? And again, I'm not ageist. I'm not, but it's just difficult.
We're in that
for me
bracket,
to see,
mate.
It's difficult for me to see how Brazil is relying so much on so many older players when they're so ripe with talent.
And how are they going to play? Like, we still don't know. We don't know what this, the Carlo Ancelotti fingerprint will be on Brazil. Is he looking at this team and saying, okay, we cannot get caught in a transition game? I'm bringing my Catenaccio knowledge to Brazil. Is he going to adopt Dunga's philosophy, and we are stout in midfield, we defend, we kick, we clear our lines, we don't try to be pretty, and maybe we advance through a World Cup? He has a team that doesn't have an identity, and that's the biggest, I think, challenge for Carlo Ancelotti. It's not just to manage a dressing room. We all know he can do that. Can he manage a game? Can he manage a game with Brazil in a World Cup, make adjustments and make them dangerous? Because again, like, this is a team that struggled in South America, both playing in Brazil. It felt like playing in Brazil, the tension was even higher for them. They couldn't perform in front of their home fans. This is the team that got trounced, that got completely demolished by Argentina 4-1 in a game in Buenos Aires that was just flat out embarrassing for them. Colombia figured out a way to beat them. Uruguay figured out a way to beat them. Paraguay figured out a way to beat them. Some of these games were 1-0. They were tight games.
We're painting a pretty bleak picture here, right? And I don't mind. It's filling me with confidence, Felipe, if England were to ever face Brazil. But because
they might.
And we might, right? And I look at this, we talk about the sort of crumbling knees of Neymar, the aging midfield behind him in Casemiro and Fabinho. Look, class on the grass, what they've contributed to the game, I'm not taking away. But we're talking about a pretty bleak picture of quite an aging team, a team of some of the names that we don't even know, which is a far cry from the Brazil I was certainly brought up on being inspired by as a kid. What is the minimum, is the public in Brazil buying this? Are they buying into this sort of 24-year drought is going to be over? We've got Ancelotti, Neymar's in the team. Or is there a minimum expectation that, we'll be happy with a semi-final, for example?
I think they would probably be happy with a semi-final berth, but it's Brazil, and anything less than greatness, no matter who is on the team sheet, is going to be considered failure. But you saw yesterday the show that was put on just to announce the squad. It was incredible. Concerts and comedians and personalities and street festivals, Carnival. It was Brazil. And that was great to see, that this is still a country, despite what we've always said, that still holds on to this hope that, like, we are the godfathers of this sport. These guys are still our heroes. And so, what is the bare minimum for them? First of all, they have to show something. Right away, they're going to be tested against Morocco, against a team that is going to be very fast and probably right now chomping at the bit to make history again at a World Cup and perhaps be a giant killer right out of the gate. And so Brazil has a lot to figure out. I still think that they are Brazil. They are going to be very well supported in the United States on the East Coast. And when we go back to Neymar, there were moments where, again, we live in a clip farm era where you see a clip, it's a poor touch, he's tripping out of bounds, and you're like, what is this guy doing. And then you see finishes that you're like, well, only Neymar can do that. You see a pass that only he sees and the vision that only he has. And that's the hope for Brazil, that he still has that at a major tournament.
I hope so too, because I love Neymar, and I just hope he goes out the right way. I know it won't be with the World Cup, but obviously Messi has his World Cup, and obviously a lot of talk of Argentina trying to repeat, but everyone knows a lot about Argentina. Let's focus in on who you think is a South American squad that we should keep our eyes on. Are we looking at Colombia? Are we looking at Ecuador? Who is the team, as we talk about Brazil falling down the ladder, who is the South American nation that is up there with Argentina that people need to pay attention to?
Well, again, not to sound biased, but it's Colombia. I think it's Colombia just based on the flair that they have up front, the quality that they have. They are going to be a younger squad than a team like Brazil. You know, Luis Diaz, I think, is a Ballon d'Or mention. I think he should be in that race. He's not winning it, but he's certainly playing himself into that category of player. And this is the team in Colombia that went to the Copa America final in 2024, played in the United States, understands the geography, the travel, everywhere they go. It is a sea of yellow for Colombia, and they have managed again to face the top teams in South America, like in Argentina, and under in the Lionel Scaloni era, the one nemesis, the one team that has been there the most, just nipping at Argentina, has been Colombia. It's not Brazil. So I think that they're going to be the team that people look at. But Ecuador, you mentioned, I think Ecuador may end up being the team with the strongest spine at this World Cup. They could emerge as this team with the best central defenders, an impressive central midfield led by Moises Caicedo, attackers, on the flanks, and a team that's just sort of flying under the radar. If they can score goals, if Ecuador can figure out a way to score goals, they're going to be a very, very dangerous team at this World Cup.
It's going to be tough to score on them, as we've seen. I feel like the best defense in South America, facing off against Ivory Coast, Germany, and Curacao, will be a very interesting Group E. But Felipe Cardenas, enjoy as always, and of course you will with Colombia, right?
Of course, right? I mean, I don't like to say it makes me nervous, but I mean, on paper, it's a pretty good squad.
It is a great squad. It's a great shot as well. Appreciate you as always, and we're looking forward to having you on more throughout the summer, leading up to the World Cup, and of course during the World Cup. And coming up next here on the S Word, we will go around the grounds as Portugal's national team roster came out, and I will tell you what I think about this squad, and I think a whole lot more about them than I do about England. Coming up after the break.
From the touchline to the terraces, talkSPORT presents the S Word. presents the S Word. Get your full-on football fix from across the football galaxy. The S Word from talkSPORT.
Welcome back to the S Word here on talkSPORT. Me, Max Scott, alongside Master Tesfazian. What a day it's been of sporting news. Reaction to Arsenal on the brink of a title for the first time in 22 years. We're heading up to North London to sample what it feels like. Come on! Because as a Forest fan, I don't really know what it feels like. What it feels like to win a title. That could be tonight. Master's convinced Bournemouth are going to do him a favour. But beyond that, the huge news is regarding Pep Guardiola and the fact that he is leaving after 10 years, 20 trophies. He's leaving Manchester City. Enzo Maresca's on his way in. And we're just going to wrap up some of the loose ends of this show. And I've got to start with you, Master. I know you're an Arsenal fan. I know that they've been your fiercest rivals for the last 4 years, toe-to-toe in the title race. But it goes without saying that surely you appreciate what he's done for Manchester City and arguably for the Premier League in making it the sort of the powerhouse that it is arguably in Europe as well.
Yeah, he's done a tremendous job. Manchester City's done an amazing job building out the infrastructure of the organization from the top down, renovating their entire philosophy and changing the game of world football as we know. It'll be interesting to see, though, what Pep does after this. And I'm sure he'll take some time off. But someone of his caliber and stature, I would assume, will get the itch again.
Yeah.
And here's my thought, okay? Pep, if you're watching this.
Which he definitely is.
Of course he is. Everyone's watching this. You spend a lot of time in America. You love America. You've had some great moments, great memories in America. A lot of people in America love you as well. However this tenure goes, we will need a new coach for the U.S. men's national team. And it is an organization that has a lot of talent. One player in which you may know, Kevin Sullivan, who's coming to Manchester City here soon, on Philadelphia Union. Pep Guardiola, you should be the next manager of the U.S. men's national team. Come take us to the next level. I'm not dismissing everything you've done at Barcelona. I'm not dismissing everything you've done in Manchester City. I'm not dismissing everything you've done in European football. All the trophies, all the accolades, everything solidified you as one of the greatest ever. But if you want to separate yourself and make yourself the greatest ever, imagine taking the U.S. men's national team to the next level. The talent is there. The infrastructure is being built out. A brand new facility in Atlanta. You understand the people. You understand the thirst and the desire to push the U.S. men's national team to the next level. We're going to give you the keys. Take it home.
Can I ask, what does that look like realistically? Let's say in an 8-year tenure, 2 World Cups, that cycle. What does that realistically look like to take, as you say, the US to the next level?
I think the biggest thing that we would need someone like Pep to do is to create an infrastructure from the grassroots level that gets rid of this pay-for-play model that has existed in the United States since God knows how long, back in when even I was playing, that makes it inaccessible for the game to be played in all parts of America. There's so many talented players.
Well, the talent pool is astonishing.
It's unbelievable. And just to think about how many players just never had the financial capabilities to play the sport that could have had a huge impact for the national team. It really filters you out just off finances alone, let alone talent.
Do you think the franchise system at top-level American football, do you think that limits the development of younger players? Because there isn't a pyramid system that players can move through, essentially.
The academy stuff, yeah. But then on the flip side, we've seen how much the college system as well has changed a lot of nations, whether it's in South America. We've seen how much it's changed the women's game, the accessibility that a college scholarship has provided for other nations to develop players as a result of getting an education in a 4-year system. I think a lot of that is changing. MLS obviously is going to switch over after the World Cup to a similar schedule pattern to start in the fall as what we see here in Europe. So a lot of these changes are happening, and it's taken a long time to get to this place. But I feel like coming out of this World Cup, regardless of the results that this current generation has, which is trying to salvage the unfortunate mishaps of missing out on the 2018 World Cup, the next generation of talent in the United States, it's very promising. And Pep, please take this gig.
Well, look,
America,
it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and it isn't a stretch to say Pep Guardiola could do any job that he so wishes after what he's achieved.
I'd rather him do that than like NYCFC, which is also a possibility because of the infrastructure.
It's a possibility. I think,
and they're getting a new stadium, so they're getting a big infrastructure. So maybe he does stay within the City family group, but go for something bigger. Let's bring it home. Red, white, and blue, baby.
Away from trying to get Pep Guardiola over to the States, we've got more World Cup announcements, and the Portugal squad is, in my opinion, I mean, maybe it's not, but it's being slept on, Master. In particular, that midfield, you can see it on the screen now, is absolutely lethal, mate.
This is, in my opinion, the best roster that we're going to see in this World Cup, and a very classy gesture there, as you can see among the forwards named. Diogo Jota's name also being mentioned there, as I think they're going to be playing with a lot of heavy hearts, of course, playing in his honor, playing for him, as he was part of that team that won the UEFA Nations League. That was brilliant during that tournament with a tremendous win over Spain that they had in penalties. This is the best midfield that you're going to see in this World Cup. When you see a Vitinha, who I think is the best holding midfielder in the world. When you see Bruno Fernandes, who can create more chances than any player that we've seen in world football. When you throw in a Joao Neves, who plays tremendously alongside Vitinha, and then the depth of Ruben Neves and Bernardo Silva as well. When you discuss, obviously, the forwards, and when you've got Pedro Neto, Rafael Leao, Conceição, Gonzalo Ramos coming off the bench, and of course, Cristiano Ronaldo, who will play a more mitigated role in here. I know a lot of people feel like that is the biggest weak link. I think it's nonsense. He's going to be in the box. The midfield will be able to hold it down, and this midfield is the best in the world. And we're not even talking about the back line as well. Portugal's going to win the World Cup. I'm shocked at the odds that they have right now. They should be much higher than what their odds should suggest at this point. This team is stacked from top to bottom. The spine is incredible. This team is deep. They're too deep at every single position. They are poised to make not only a deep run, but they have the depth and the quality to win it all. And what a story it would be being able to win it for Diogo Jota and also for Cristiano Ronaldo for one last time in his final World Cup to win the World Cup as well. Portugal's going to win it. I am so convinced. I've been on this train now for 12, 13 months. It's hard for me to sway off of this opinion when I look at England, when I look at France, when I look at Spain, when I look at Argentina. All due respect to these nations that are also front runners and well worthy of winning the World Cup. But you look at this Portugal team, and you cannot tell me that these other nations have a better roster than what we're looking at with Portugal right now.
I mean, it's a strong shout. You can't deny that it's absolutely quality. I just sort of think France, England, Spain, they're all on a similar level.
England is not on the same level as Portugal. Yeah. They're not on the same level as Portugal.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Declan Rice, absolutely incredible. Declan Rice is up there. You say Vitinha is... I'm not necessarily trying to challenge you and say Vitinha's not quality. I'm not saying
And I'm saying as an Arsenal fan.
No, fine. But I'm saying Declan Rice is on the same level. They're different players. They're on the same level. Elliot Anderson has been one of the best midfielders in Europe this season.
There you go with the Forest. You gotta give him a shout, of course.
But it's the truth. I mean, the stats do not lie. No midfielder has won more duels than Elliot Anderson in Europe. And other statistics show that as well in terms of pass accuracy, etc., XG. So all I'm trying to say is I don't disagree that Portugal have an incredible midfield, but I can't. You can. I can't say with confidence... with this World Cup, and you talk about the rosters, I can't say with confidence that there's going to be one outright winner. I can't call it right now.
I'm calling it. If you're looking for a dark horse that for whatever reason the odds are incredibly in the bettor's favor, go with Portugal.
Now, one story that we had planned to talk about today,
we did, unfortunately,
and we're going to briefly mention it, is Spygate 2.0, the hearing involving Southampton and the spine allegations against Middlesbrough. We expected an announcement today. We were told there would be an announcement today with the playoff final, the most lucrative game in football, happening on Saturday, right? In true football litigators sort of fashion, there hasn't been a decision today. This has been postponed till tomorrow, and it tells you everything that is wrong with the sort of legal system in the sort of ecosystem of football in this country. There is zero transparency and nothing happens on time. Why aren't there any journalists that are in that hearing able to report accurately on what is only speculation at the minute? Why is it that we're told we expect an announcement today and it comes tomorrow? It's because they cannot run these things efficiently. And who is there as the victims? Hull are victims because they don't know who they're going to play. Southampton fans are victims because they don't know whether they're going to be going to Wembley or not. And so are Middlesbrough as an entire football club, because while Southampton aren't denying the allegations, Middlesbrough are trying to fight their corner for the integrity of the game. And I think it's an absolute travesty, Master, that this has been delayed, just like the 115 charges for Manchester City.
So with this delay, what do you think ultimately will be the decision? I know we got to wrap up here soon, but what do you think ultimately this delay signals?
I don't think the EFL have got the teeth to do the right thing and disqualify Southampton from the playoffs. They'll give them a hefty fine. There might even be a points deduction. Tom de Rijkaard, his job might even have to be on the line. But the right decision, which is to give Middlesbrough that place, won't happen because they've left it too late and they've not been decisive when they needed to be.
I think, unfortunately, you are right, because it doesn't seem like the possibility of moving the game either logistically sounds a bit more of a nightmare than we would like, unfortunately.
Sadly so. However, we can say that we will be talking about this tomorrow if they can get their backsides in gear and make a decision, and hopefully we can bring that to you tomorrow. That's all.
It's been great having you on the show. Appreciate you jumping on the S Word,
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll be jumping on again, hopefully sometime soon. But that's all from us today on the S Word. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a lot of fun. Master, been an absolute pleasure, mate. We'll be back the same time tomorrow with plenty more where this came from. Do not forget to follow us on our socials at talkSPORT S Word. This is the S Word, because round here we use the F word, not the S word.
Ah, there you go.
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfacion from talkSPORT.